We've done that final little stage to get it to 99.96%, so in excess of the premium battery grade, but with almost no nasties, if you like. So it's very clean, high purity, well-rounded, good tap density. It's the best stuff.
Hello and welcome to the Assay TV. Today I'm here with Jon Dugdale, Technical Director at Metals Australia. Jon, thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you, Amy.
And so Metals Australia is an Australian exploration company focusing on graphite and gold in Canada and lithium, zinc and other base metals in Western Australia. So maybe you want to give us a bit more of an introduction to Metals Australia than what I just said.
Well, I think you've covered it pretty well. I guess the focus has been a number of different projects over the years, and we've got quite a portfolio of battery metal projects, both in Canada and in Western Australia, covering quite the spectrum of battery metals and materials. But I think the key has been over the last couple of months has been really advancing one of those more significant projects, the Lac Rainy Graphite project, to the next level.
Okay.
And that's probably the key outcome of the last couple of announcements has been, okay, this is the flagship project.
Okay, so let's look a little bit more at this Lac Rainy Nord graphite project, which is based in Quebec. Can you give us a few, details about the project and what's happening there?
Yeah, so it's ideally located in eastern Quebec, so that puts it in the North American space where they've got a lot of demand for the sort of things we want to produce. We've already got a high-grade resource there of 13.3 million tonnes at 11.5% graphitic carbon. That includes nearly 10 million tonnes of indicated resources at a higher grade of 13.1% graphite, which is critically important because it means we can take it through to feasibility without actually having to do any more drilling. Now, we completed a scoping study on flake graphite production a couple of years ago, so we're able to demonstrate that we can produce the 96% flake graphite that you need to reach as a benchmark. And we did a scoping study that showed that we can produce 100,000 tonnes per annum of that material for 14 years at a cash cost of around US $430 a tonne and an average product price, which is probably a bit higher now, of around $885 a tonne. So that's a 100% margin for 14 years with a capital cost of around 180 million. So very robust project economics in the scoping study.
Okay, that sounds great. And so you've recently done some battery test results that confirm that the graphite from Lac Rainy exceeds the quality that's actually required for lithium-ion battery anodes. Can you tell us a little bit more about these findings?
Yeah, so this has been a critical step in our strategy. So not only did we want to be able to say, yep, we can produce lots of flake graphite, which will probably be really good in a battery, but we wanted to prove it. And that next step is turning the majority of the material that we have in our deposit, which is the fine to medium grain flake. We do have large flake, we've got about 25%, which attracts a premium for the concentrate product of around $1,500 to $2,000 a tonne. But it's the fine to medium flake, which is in high demand for producing lithium-ion battery anodes for lithium-ion batteries. So we wanted to be able to see if we could produce that next stage of product, which is called spherical graphite, and then prove that it was good in a battery. And that's taken a couple, about 9 months to do, which is, sent our shareholders a bit crazy, but we had to do it to be able to prove that this is the best stuff you can get. So the key outcomes of that are, one, we can produce high quality spherical graphite, and that's in 3 parts. One, we can break it down to a finer material, but still preserve most of the material. So we get a very high yield from the flake graphite to this 20 micron material of around 65%, which compares to the industry average of about 40%. So that's quite remarkable and will be very positive for the economics. Then you've got to make the little spherical. So it's a bit like screwing up a bit of paper or rolling it into alfoil into a ball. And we're able to create very nicely rounded, evenly distributed in terms of size sphericals. And that's important because that leads to a good packing density, which means you can pack them into the battery, which is better for holding charge in a battery. The last aspect was we needed to get the purity up to plus 99.9%, or even more preferably plus 99.95%. But preferably get it there without having to use lots of noxious acid like they do in China. So we used a low temperature alkaline bake to get it to 99.9%, which is the minimum you need for battery grade. And then by that process, we're introducing a bit of sodium, so very low level of any deleterious elements. That sodium needed to be leached with a bit of hydrochloric acid. And so we've done that final little stage to get it to 99.96%. So in excess of the premium battery grade, but with almost no nasties, if you like. So it's very clean, high purity, well-rounded, good tap density. It's the best stuff you can get, probably. The next step was to actually put it into a battery and do the battery cycle test. And that's the announcement we made yesterday. And the outcomes of that work, after about 8 weeks of cycling the batteries, charging, discharging, and so forth, is the lithium-ion battery anode material from Lac Rainy has very good energy storage capacity, above the required amount for uncoated spherical graphite, very good discharge rates, which is essentially the rate at which it powers an electric car. But even more of a standout was that after all these cycles of test work, the anode was virtually undamaged, which leads to very strong durability. And these are the three big things that the battery manufacturers look for. So as soon as we introduce this stuff to a battery manufacturer electric vehicle, they'll be all over us. And that's the validity that we'll get at this next stage. So the next steps are take the study on flake graphite production through to at least pre-feasibility, but set it up to be able to go to feasibility study stage, but also look at spherical graphite production, because 100% of the spherical graphite production around the world at the moment comes out of China, and North American subsidies and the market in general is dying to get more spherical graphite production and basic graphite production in North America. So we want to look at that as well, at least do a concept, do a scoping study at taking it to the next step. And that skips over the problem of China dominating that production area. And it's certainly what the North Americans want to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's been a lot of discussion about graphite over the past few months, and especially here at the 1-to-1 Melbourne event. Can you maybe talk a little bit about like some of the fundamentals for the metal, supply, demand, all of that?
Yeah, so I've touched on a bit about that in the spherical graphite market. So, before I started looking at graphite, I didn't even know lead pencils had graphite in them. But now I've sort of, talked to enough people to find out quite a bit about it. There's a number of different products. And I often say to people, the graphite business is more like making shoes than making a mining product, because you've got to concentrate on what are you actually trying to sell here. The large flake component, so it's important to have flake graphite rather than just fine amorphous material, because that's got the biggest market. The large flake, plus 180 micron, has a number of different uses and attracts a premium. So it can be used for electric arc furnace linings and expandable graphite, which is a new building cladding product, and so forth. So you sell that stuff directly. The fine to medium flake, though, is the stuff that you put into spherical graphite to go into lithium-ion battery anodes, and that's the market that's growing. That's where the demand is already starting to exceed supply. Not only for the basic product, there's a fair bit of fine to medium flake around, but not all of it makes good spherical graphite. That's why we wanted to do that test work, to show that ours you can make really good stuff out of. A lot of them they can't, or they lose most of it or something. So the key product that comes out of that is the spherical graphite that goes into the battery anode, and that's the market that's growing the most. So you can upgrade from a $700 to $900 US a tonne product to a $3,500 US a dollar per tonne product. So that's the key market we're talking about, and that's the market where the demand is going to grow as people diversify away from dependence on China.
Is there this like a similar kind of supply-demand imbalance for graphite that we're seeing across the other battery metals, or not as pronounced?
Certainly for the downstream products it is. There's a lot of graphite in the world, but graphite's not graphite.
Right.
Graphite is all sorts of different things. So there's actually a shortage of the right sort of graphite. And there's a shortage of people who have actually proven they've got the right sort of graphite. So for our product that we want to produce, there is a shortage. And China is actually starting to run out of their own supply of that material. And then there's the other side of it where the US and Europe and so forth are supporting, green production of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we're swimming with the tide on that. The other battery metals like lithium have a similar scenario. The others are sort of a little bit mixed in terms of nickel and cobalt and so forth. But certainly graphite and lithium, I think the articles I've seen lately are saying graphite's the new lithium, which is a funny thing to say, so they're so different, but there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, looking kind of at some of your other projects, so you have tenements adjoined to Patriot Battery Metals Corvette Lithium project located in the Corvette Lithium Trend. Are you seeing similarities between the two projects? When is exploration set to commence here?
It's quite a remarkable scenario, actually. We actually found out that some of our gold tenements in Quebec were located inside and on the trend that hosts the Patriot Battery Metals lithium project, which is the hottest lithium discovery in the world at the moment. We've also got tenements along strike to the west of that area and other tenements to the south. So we've been able to identify that there's actually pegmatite on some of that stuff, from some of the previous work, but never been sampled for lithium. So the next step for us is to send our crews out. As of this morning, we were talking to them. We said, go out and sample those lithium pegmatites. Yeah. And so they're just organising to go out, because we've got a group in Canada that does our field work, and they'll be sampling as many pegmatites as they can find. And that's going to be starting hopefully within the next month or two.
All right, sounds great. And maybe we can touch a little bit on some of your projects in Western Australia. Do you want to give us a quick overview of what's happening here?
Yeah, so our main project in Western Australia, which has to some extent been the focus up until recently, is the Manindi project. Now, that started off life as a base metal project. We've got a zinc, copper, silver resource of just over 1 million tonnes of high-grade zinc, and potential for that to grow. But interestingly, we've also got lithium-bearing pegmatites cutting across the zinc trend. And we did a little bit of work on those in 2018, got some very good results. But then about a year ago, we discovered a brand new, quite thick pegmatite that we did some rock chip sampling along, and values of over 2% Li2O, which sent our share price running. And that's why we raised our $18 million, and we've still got 16.5 of it left. So that put us in a very good position. Now, we then drilled that prospect, and it's come up quite well. It's about 10 metres thick at plus 1%. We've chosen to now look at the mineralogy and the metallurgy, a bit like we did with the graphite, to just prove that we've got the right product and the right stuff before we go ahead and prove up a resource in that area. And we've also got a third discovery on that project, which is a large magnetic, what looked to be a vanadium-bearing magnetite deposit, but with very high titanium values. And we've now found that we've actually got high vanadium magnetite and high titanium ilmenite, and we can probably separate those, and we've got a bit of nickel, copper, and cobalt in between. So that's another discovery in metals. So we've really got a huge portfolio of battery metals projects. Just about all of the battery metals have been ticked off. And it's now a matter of pushing forward with the graphite, demonstrating the genuine multiples of value that we can show through the completion of the studies, and doing the same sort of thing with the other projects. Metallurgy first, is it worth drilling out? And then we push those forward as well, and we've got $16 million left to do it. All right, sounds very low cash burn. So,
and I guess my last question is really, key focus for the next 12 months. You talked about, the spherical graphite production. What else will you be kind of predominantly focusing on?
Yeah, so the predominant focus is going to be taking the graphite through. Interestingly, at the moment, we've got about a 25 to 30 million market cap, about a 10 to 15 million enterprise value. We think that over the next 12 months, by completing the pre-feasibility study and maybe going to feasibility, demonstrating the economics around spherical graphite production and proving up a little bit more resource. So we'll do some more drilling on the graphite, because we've got at least 10 times the amount of strike length to look at, that we can demonstrate hundreds of millions of dollars of value. That's a fair bit more than 10 to 15 million.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we think demonstrating that will be value accretive. And then we've got the flashy stuff around the lithium to talk about as well, which will probably produce these nice little spikes in our share price whenever we talk about it. And then we've got some more of that really solid stuff based on the metallurgy and further work on those West Australian projects. And it presents us a lot of options. A lot of people say, gee, you've got a lot of projects, isn't that a problem? I said, no, because we've got this many options. I'd rather that than have very few options. And that's really what it's all about. So we think we can now demonstrate a huge amount of value in the graphite project, but also we've got all these other opportunities and all sorts of options to how we can move forward with those.
Sounds great.
And the cash to do it.
Perfect. Well, Jon, thanks very much for being with me today and explaining a little bit more about Metals Australia.
Thank you.
Thank you.